You're listening to a fight against free kill laws from AMP Media Production Studio.
Welcome to the Fight Against Free Kill Laws with Ed Salazar, where we give a voice to those who have suffered firsthand from medical malpractice. In Florida, families devastated by medical negligence are left without justice because of a law many don't even know exists. Florida's free kill law prevents families from holding doctors accountable. These are real stories with real loss and no justice. Contact Ed at 561-239-2417 or visit afreekill.com. Today we uncover the truth, share real stories, and demand change.
Good evening, and thank you again for taking time out of your day to listen to our podcast. We have a show today that I've been very excited, anxious about bringing to you. It's another story of just a tragic case of medical error, but the circumstances of this one are particularly compelling. We have the sister and the mother of the victim. The sister is Kristen Fenig, and she's an EMT. The mother is Sandy Bass, and she's a nurse. And without any further ado, let's bring them in and hear the story about Gerald. Good evening, Mrs. Bass. Kristen.
Hello.
Thank you for taking the time to be with us. What I'd like is for the viewers to get an idea of the character, the nature of Gerald. You know, what kind of a man he was. And, you know, if you could share a little bit about his condition.
To try to put into words the character of Gerald, I would be here all day. Gerald was unique. He was one of a kind. I mean, if people say this about their loved ones all the time, but anybody who ever met Gerald would tell you that this is exactly him. He was unapologetically funny. He loved his family. He never met a stranger. Every face that he's seen, if it was somebody that he'd never met before, it was just a person that he had never had a chance to meet yet, but he was going to. Gerald was 50 when he passed away, and he had Down syndrome. He was born at a time when Down syndrome was a faux pas. It was things that you kind of hid away. Families were embarrassed of. It was, you know, they would be put in state facilities and things. And he was born in the 70s. And my mom, she didn't care. She didn't see disability, ability, differences, similarities. She saw her son and loved him just as if he had no disability. And he acted a lot of the times like he had no disability. His Down syndrome was his superpower. It was not anything that held him back in any stretch of living, a good, happy life.
Well, in the notes that you sent me, you indicated that he was very high functioning. He held a job. He was very involved in Special Olympics. And you know, I agree. There in the last, I don't know, two dozen years, there's been an enlightenment about the capabilities of, you know, people with Down syndrome. You see it all the time. You know, very high functioning.
Yeah, the school systems have changed dramatically as far as what they used to do versus what they do now with the special needs and stuff. They used to put them in rooms and let them color all day whenever they would be sent to school, whereas now they actually, some of them, the higher functioning ones, go into normal classrooms and stuff. So the school system has kind of helped bring about change whenever it comes to the differences of now versus then.
Mm-hmm. Well, he was an invaluable member of your family, no doubt. And his loss, you know, the hole that leaves in the fabric of your lives, there's no repairing that hole. You know, and so many of the people that are part of our community. You know, we all share the same sentiment. Go ahead and you know, tell us about how this whole tragic thing came to pass.
So he started coughing one morning, and got to where he was having a little bit of like wheezing, and he couldn't get anything coughed up. My mom said that she was going to get him set up with his breathing machine because he had chronic asthma and things, but he was nothing that ever really held him back. So she was getting his breathing machine set up to kind of see if that would help, because it was first thing in the morning whenever he woke up. And she said that while she was getting it set up, he was sitting in his chair and he just kind of went plain faced and collapsed out of the chair. So she immediately called 911. EMS showed up. They said when they got there that he did have a pulse and stuff, but they loaded him up, took him to the emergency room. I guess at some point in time, there was CPR that was done on him. They intubated him in the ambulance on the way to the emergency room. The first emergency room that they took him to is one step above a urgent care. So they kind of made sure he was stable there. He was breathing on his own. He was still ventilated, but he was able to breathe over the vent at that time. So they set him up to have him transferred to another facility. They transferred him the same day. He went to another hospital that is local to where we are, and he was in the emergency room there. They did a CT scan of chest, abdomen, and head. The head CT showed that he had some mild swelling, and they recommended that he have an MRI. Instead of having the MRI, they admitted him into the ICU. We questioned the next day about the MRI, and they told us that they couldn't do it, that they had to redo the CT first.
They never really, excuse me, they never told us that they couldn't do the MRI. They just basically hushed any talk of the MRI and said that they were going to repeat the CT scan on Tuesday. This was on a Monday that was the next day because he went in on Sunday.
So on the second day that he was there, they had him on propofol and stuff just to keep his body relaxed. So the first official day that he was there after being in the emergency room, they tried weaning him off of that. He handled it well. He never had stopped breathing on his own. The ventilator was just there for assist. But his blood pressure was spiking. So they said that they needed to give his body a little bit more time to rest. They put him back on the propofol and the midazolam. And that was pretty much it that happened on that second day. The third day is that Tuesday. They did the repeat CT. That CT showed that his brain had swollen worse than the first one that they had done 2 days prior. We questioned again.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but did they ever give you any explanation for why they thought that the edema might have gotten worse? The cerebral edema? You say that he didn't hit his head when he fainted, right? There was no
Never. He was sitting in a chair just like me, kind of slumped forward onto her. So yeah, there was never any head trauma.
So
they never could give an
explanation for the cerebral edema.
Not about that, or what about actually caused him to faint
breathing
or pass out. What that original cause was. And then, so after they did the second CT that showed that it was worse, we questioned again the MRI, and that is day 3. And that's when they tell us that they do not have an MRI that is capable of doing a scan on someone that is intubated. They said that they needed a special MRI machine, and this facility did not have it, which they knew that on day 1 when he went in. They knew that on day 2 when he was there, and the radiologist recommended on the first one to have the MRI. So we started questioning then and asking, can we get him transferred? And it was one thing after another.
Well, we also,
He's one.
oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Was the hospital, with the doctor that ordered the MRI, was he in that hospital or was he remote?
That I don't know. I know they have radiologists in house, so I believe he was in facility versus reading it off of something that was
Well,
sent to him
well,
through a program.
the reason I ask is, you know, there aren't too many hospitals that I know of that have MRI that don't have MRI compatible ventilators.
They said that it wasn't the ventilator. They said that it was the fact that they needed an open MRI because of the ventilator, and theirs isn't open. They kind of talked in circles anytime we started asking the bigger pointed questions as far as why you didn't let us know this in the beginning. It was kind of, they talked in circles and never gave us straight answers. And that's the night that they also did not monitor the cardizem that they had put him on, because they took him off of all of the medications, the propofol and stuff, on day 3.
And at that time when they started administering it, he had high blood pressure?
He had high blood pressure, not super high, but they didn't want it to get super high.
Right.
They were trying to keep it low so they could keep him off the propofol and stuff. About 15 minutes after being off the propofol and midazolam, he started breathing on his own again. We could tell the difference between his breaths and the machine breaths, just the way that he breathes. He's a belly breather versus, what happens with the machine, we could tell.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, we learned that machine, the respiratory machine, the ventilator, we learned what was him, what was not him, just by the figures that were on the machine.
Right.
So all afternoon, it was him breathing on his own. Once they stopped the medication, his pupillary reflexes came back. He started responding to the pain stimuli and things. And then that night, they did not monitor the cardizem that they had put him on to kind of keep his blood pressure low, or not low, but not elevated. And they bottomed his blood pressure out. The lowest, I think, in the 45 minutes that it took them to get his blood pressure back was about 48/30.
Oh my God. That's
for about 30 minutes.
That won't perfuse your organs.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, his map was in the 30s.
I'm sorry. I apologize for. Go ahead, Mrs. Bass. I apologize for interrupting you.
No, I just was reiterating. It was 45 minutes that his blood pressure was down in. I think at 1.2, although it's not documented in his records, it was 28 on the machine. But it took him
mean airway pressure.
The map was in the high 20s, low 30s. Whenever he was the lowest blood pressure wise.
But during that 45 minutes after he had been breathing over the machine all day, we watched him slowly stop taking as many breaths, and the machine was taking, I can't say that.
During the 45 minutes, he breathed on his own, still fighting for about 30 of that. And then finally, his body just kind of gave out. It fought so hard with him being the only person that was fighting.
And what was the staff doing at all this time?
They called an on-call nurse practitioner. That nurse practitioner ordered a 250 ml bolus of saline. And he wasn't hypotensive because he was hypovolemic. He was hypotensive because of the medication that they still hadn't stopped at that time.
So they administer the cardizem, and they weren't monitoring his. He was in an ICU at this time?
He was.
My God.
He was.
Let's back up a little bit. What was? Did they ever make any efforts to monitor the pressure from the edema?
We asked about ICP monitors. We asked about all of that. We asked about
Intracranial
medication.
pressure monitors, yeah.
Can you put him on something, steroid wise or mannitol or something that is a medication to help with? And they said, the one doctor flat looked at us in the face and said, there is no treatment for brain swelling. Like, we are not, and we knew that there was.
Yeah.
And that's about the same time that we started demanding that they move him to a different hospital. And this was before the blood pressure crash. And they kept giving us excuse after excuse about why they couldn't get him moved to another facility. Come to find out, they didn't even try to start getting him moved until Thursday, and he had been there since Sunday. And then by then, because of what they had done blood pressure wise, that basically he stayed alive on the machine until Sunday, but Tuesday night should have been his.
He never breathed on his own over the machine again after that.
So no facility then at that time would take him after the blood pressure crash, because they knew at that point what we were hoping wasn't going to be the outcome. But they knew at that point that there was nothing now that they could do to reverse, one, what was already happening, and two, what the hospital had compounded.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious to anyone who's listening to your story that there were multiple issues that were improperly addressed.
Well, we also found out during that time that they didn't have an on-staff neurologist, no neurosurgeon, no neurologist to speak of. It was all done via a computer screen.
Yeah.
Like a telehealth visit
from another state. They weren't even local and just at home. They were out of state.
They didn't even bring that in for his neuro consult until Wednesday.
And this was after the hypotensive crisis.
Although they weren't treating the brain, apparently to this hospital, the brain is less important than the gallbladder. In the original abdominal CT that they did, the radiologist said that the gallbladder looked a little enlarged, a little inflamed. So very next day, they're doing a gallbladder ultrasound, but not treating the brain.
Incredible. Just incredible.
It was shocking. It was shocking to, as being in the medical field, to watch them do everything they could possibly do but what needed to be done, and act like it was okay that that's what they were doing. They acted like we were intruding on their profession by even asking about, isn't there some medication you can give or something, because we knew there was.
Yes. You told me. No, I'm sorry.
Because he was on the ventilator and stuff, we couldn't, because we've thought about signing him out AMA, trying to find a private ambulance company that we could pay out of pocket to then take him, because if we could get him to another emergency room, that way they couldn't turn him away. But we couldn't find anybody that we would be able to facilitate doing that. Most of the ambulance companies needed, because it was hospital to hospital, not like hospital home, they needed a doctor's order to be able to transport, and we couldn't get a doctor to sign.
Expand a little bit on what you told me about after Gerald's passing, the comments from other members of the special needs community in your area relative to that hospital.
So once we started the Justice for Gerald and the Healthcare Coalition, the leader of the local Special Olympics, who has known Gerald since he was younger. I mean, she
Middle school.
has known him forever, because he did everything, every sport he could do, he did. she had reached out and said that she had been tracking a few, and she thinks that the hospital is intentionally um, delaying care or not doing their due diligence for the special needs, because she's noticed that there have been several over the last couple of years that have gone in for things that should not be life threatening, that they never came out from. Which after what we witnessed with Gerald, it does make sense. It's like they wanted to do just enough to keep him alive for as long as they could, but not do enough to where now we're going to mess up and let him live, because then we could sue on behalf of him if he would have come out of the hospital.
You're
So
making reference.
they had,
You're making reference to the profile because he was
yep.
older than 25, single, and no dependent children.
But if he would
He's
have
a free
lived,
kill. Correct.
Which is almost 100% of the special needs community here.
Exactly.
almost, I mean, yeah, all over Florida, it's disproportionately affects the special needs community because they're not the ones that are going to be getting married, having kids. You know, they're the ones that are living with family for their entire lives. That our loss shouldn't be any less grievance and looked upon any less than if he would have been 24 or if he would have had a child. A loss is a loss, and pain is pain, and grief is grief, regardless of if you're on this side or that side of that law.
How did you find out about the free kill law?
When we left the hospital, after we had to set up funeral and do all of that, we didn't know what to do anger wise and with our grief. So we channeled our grief into trying to now do something to prevent it from happening again. If there was something that we could do to hold the doctors accountable, something we could do to hold the hospital accountable so that maybe somebody else's family member doesn't do this. And we started contacting attorneys, and probably over the course of 2 days, I probably talked to 20. She probably talked to just as many. And we were getting turned down left and right, left and right, left and right. And we didn't know. We had no idea why. I mean, to us and anybody else that we described what happened to, they're like, clear cut. There should be no question. And it wasn't until one attorney just finally explained to us why. He flat said, he's like, I'm not saying that I can't take the case because there is no case. He's like, from what you're saying, there's definitely a case and a presentable case and a winnable case. He's the one that told us about the Florida free kill. And then we started looking into it, and we're absolutely appalled that we live in a state that cares that does not care, and shows it in writing in a law that, you know, there's the half of their population almost, they doesn't matter if they die or not.
Sophia, can we bring up the family photo, please? Okay, so we're looking at Sandy, we're looking at Gerald, and we're looking at Kristen, right? All you got to do is look at those smiles, and you know the love that this family had for one another. And all of us in this community, we all know that there is no price that you can put on that. Thank you, Sophia. Can you please just tell us, now that you've learned about other people like you, I know you've started your own. Tell us about what you're doing in social media.
So we started a Facebook page and an Instagram. It's a Healthcare Justice Coalition with the hashtag Justice for Gerald, because we want to join the fight to try to change to try to make changes and make enough waves and make the voices of those that are harmed by this law loud enough that they can't ignore us anymore, so that hopefully his death will mean something eventually, so that we would be able to look back and say, yes, he died. He should not have died, but he forced us to fight for people who also can't fight for themselves.
You know,
So
Kristen.
we make posts, educational. Um, we have started sharing when, because our hope now is going to lie in the new Florida governor, and hopefully the new Florida governor will kind of fight equally as hard for the change. So we're going to as many of the political rallies and political campaigns that we can, even if we don't want to vote for that person, but because we want to be able to ask that person the big question. You know, if you were to be elected as governor, would you sign or veto the repeal of the Florida free kill, and why? Because then other people are hearing who may not have known about Florida free kill. And it's got their wheels turning, hopefully, and questioning and looking into it and then spreading the word.
Yes.
So,
and we have to demand of the, if a senator, if a representative, they step up to sponsor the bill again, we have to, at that point, we have to demand that they state that if there was another veto, would they move to override it? You know, all you need to make a motion to override is a 2/3 majority. Both houses voted to abolish the law by more than 90% each. So there's no explanation. There's no justification for why they did not move to override the governor's veto, unless they were supporting it simply for optics.
and at this point, nobody really would know unless they change their vote now. If it ever gets brought up again, are they going to change their yes that they did originally to a no?
I think they had refused. Somebody from the Senate, I know the name, but I don't want to say the name, refused to do that vote.
Yeah.
And they brought the bill up again. The same woman, the same House representative brought it up again. I want to say it was March of this year, and it never made it out of the House. They wouldn't even put it on the floor of the Senate. So those people who voted yes back in 2025 are now wanting to not have anything to do with it from the way it looks, because they wouldn't even bring it to the floor of the Senate to vote. So it basically died in the House.
Well, there is going to be a lot of collaboration, you know, with people like you, people like me, and the rest of the members of the Florida Medical Rights Association, the healthcare initiatives, your coalition. There's going to be a lot of collaboration, and we are getting more and more voices all the time. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
Just definitely, if the law doesn't affect you, it affects someone that you know.
Right.
So it may not be something that really you think about, but if you see a post talking about it, if you see someone on a social media page that's sharing information, share that information too. Even though it's not information that really it concerns you, it concerns people that you know. Because if you do the math of per census and stuff in Florida, it is almost half of the population that this law affects.
Well,
so it may not be you.
Very well said.
It's your neighbor.
And the odd thing about it is they claimed that this was to save money, but then when they voted for caps, they refused to put caps on the people who are allowed to sue. So there's no money saving involved at all when there's no caps
No, you're right,
on
Sandy.
what.
And all the points in a white paper that the lobbyists made, all of them have been debunked. None of them are true.
Well, you can pull up all of the lobbyist names because I did that on the last bill that they brought up in March. And they're all medical providers, they're insurance companies, they're physicians groups, hospitals, and that's unelected. Unelected is who they're listening to instead of the elected voters in the state.
Who they're supposed to represent.
Exactly.
Listen, I'm terribly sorry we're out of time. We're out of time, but from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being willing to tell your story. I know it hurts. I know how hard it is, but your story is going to be a very, very powerful piece to our total message. Thank you. We'll talk again soon,
Thank
okay?
you.
The podcast will be up on social media, on YouTube and Facebook, and any of the other people in our organization that want to use it, we provide them a link, and we're sharing it far and wide as much as we can. And not just in Florida, we're sharing it nationally. We're sharing it around the world. Okay, they are going to have to listen to us. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you for watching The Fight Against Free Kill Laws with Ed Salazar, where we interview those who have dealt firsthand with medical malpractice. Families are devastated by medical malpractice and left with no justice. This isn't just a loophole. It's a failure to protect the ones we love. It's time to change the law. It's time for accountability. Contact your state legislatures, visit afreekill.com for more information on how to help, or contact Ed at 561-239-2417. Because every life should matter.
You're listening to A Fight Against Free Kill Laws from AMP Media Production Studio.